The cancel mob people are fucking children. They don't realize it either. They'll call me crazy, but it's true, and good research backs me up, and I'll put some of this stuff in the underbar. But science has known for a while that reading Harry Potter, and by the way, I have issues with J.K. Rowling at this point. Okay, I'm not like she's persona non grata at this point, but that doesn't mean that her books didn't have an effect for a while. But they found that reading Harry Potter made a lot of millennials think a lot about minorities that were different from them because when we thought about it, we realized that mudblood in real life would translate to "I hate people who are different from me." She made the hateful people the villains in her story. In doing this, we had the series not been invented, and thus inspiring a generation to back Barack Obama, the first black man never would have actually won the presidency. It was her book that actually handed him the presidency, which there's a little bit of skepticism around that's justified, but it's non-controversial among scientists at this point that reading Harry Potter made the kids less racist. It's just the scope of that impact, they're wondering, but I really do think that it was the if that factor, like Harry Potter had not been invented and written, Barack Obama would have never been elected. You minus that factor. I mean, there were a lot of other things that went into his election, but that's that was necessary. It was a necessary factor among everything else that was necessary. I know J.K. Rowling is now deservedly persona non grata. I'm not super defensive of her anymore for the LGB without the T shit she's pulling. And her bad takes on trans people, which have a huge tendency to overgeneralize. Like the trans people have bad apples amongst them, but so does everybody else. Why pick on them to the exclusion of other groups? Doesn't make sense, really. I don't want to. I just don't want to be seen. I just don't want to be seen like I think there's no bad behavior by trans women in that statement, though. However, I'm not naming names at the moment, though, because I don't have any off the top of my head. I just hear about the ones who bully lesbians into sex. Do not approve of that, but it's just I'm somewhat concerned about being hounded for not supporting them, when in fact they literally keep a trans woman friend around and paid for things for them, and like literally I'm providing for one at the moment. Uh, it's true, but and all this shit is why I'm super pissed about Lackey being canceled over this now. Lackey was a better, and more inclusive person than Rowling ever was able to even dream of being, and far more tolerant and light years ahead of her, particularly on trans issues. This action moved by these fucking people because the Lackey life like this and this moved by these fucking people, like because of the Lackey Library of work, tons of lives have been saved. Tons of people have learned there was an alternative to the straitjacket conventional life, and they ejected her like a bunch of zootic freaks. These people, you have no understanding of consequence. You think that the consequences and stakes are simply that a person who said a bad word got what she had coming because of that, I'm absolutely certain the people criticizing her over this are some of the most self-destructively incompetent human beings I've ever run across. Yeah, I said it. If you're offended, well, maybe think it over because I don't really care at all. I'm certainly not sorry for being right about you. I don't want to hurt you by saying it. It's just that your feelings are not a big priority. It's true. My purpose here isn't to impact your feelings one way or the other. It's to hopefully inspire you some self-reflection in you to wake up to a wider world than the one you seem to think you live in, and show you a bigger picture than you're seeing because you're missing the forest for the trees. See, there's a bigger picture here, and all of it, this mentality, this shame culture, like the left, and its major problem it has is that this moral plane of existence that it holds higher than the real world it lives in, and tries to scold the real world to conform with its principles without any semblance and understanding of the consequences, because the real world will operate the way that it does despite their moral preaching. Her catalog of work will continue for some time to inspire people to question bigotry, question intolerance, and fight for inclusion. You people, the cancel mob, purity pony shit, the self righteous crusaders, you are hurting yourself. And you don't realize the injury and how brutally self inflicted it is. As a critique of the left, I would say that the left has not learned its lesson by Trump's election, and the one that we were supposed to from all of this. We lost in 2016 because huge amount of our party thought that demonizing our opponents would make them vote for you, at least in part. Maybe a confluence of other factors contributed, but that was one that we can't afford to ignore. And that's just it. And demonizing Mercedes Lackey and white people who defend her, you're literally begging them to exit stage left and go vote hard right. You're baiting them into it. You are delusional in imagining that shaming people will embarrass them and then make them embarrassed into better people. You will fail into embarrassing people into better human beings. Trust me. People never become better by being shamed and demonized. They become bitter and cold and nasty, vengeful and spiteful. You have no understanding of consequence. The self-appointed mob that is now mounted against her are like children in that sense. Children do things without any semblance of what the consequence will be because they don't understand them. Well, in Lackey's case, if you don't close ranks around her, the consequences are will make it so that the left turns into looking to be an even less inclusive place than the right. It'll drive otherwise well-meaning folks straight into the arms of the right and into Stormfront. You know, you need to wake up and stop these purifying crusades and stop burning shit down. The left can't afford to be an even more unwelcoming place than the right. You fools, it will destroy us. And that's what I can't I like my rage about all of this because we know this about Lackey. We know what side of the aisle most of her readers hail from. It's not a big mystery which side of the aisle is basically supporting her. It's not a big intuitive leap of the imagination either to realize that they're Democrats. But the Democrats are doing this to themselves, and it's sad. It's a sad spectacle of self-destruction that we're watching in real time. I mean, and if you go look at the identities of most of the people that are calling this shit out, like which party like do they hail from? They'll openly admit that they're Trumpers. So it's like I feel like my voice is necessary here because I'm not a Trumper. I'm a Democrat, but I died in the wool really. But I'm this cancel culture shit that's been going on. Yeah, bad optics from any reasonable person's point of view, and it doesn't have my support. That's for sure. I'm just a normal person that may occasionally vote for the Democratic Party, and you know, any normal person's eyes and perspectives on seeing this is incredulous at it. I mean, Lackey, she like she made a gaffe, and because of that gaffe, you know, what happened here, taking stock of it, is that sometime after the gaffe was made, somebody took to Twitter to whine about it. It was one account, one person on Twitter who whined about it, but that person had a tour by their name, and so they were part of a panel at the place, and so they were able to have their voice listened to the exclusion of everybody else whose voice now doesn't mean anything because they're not part of tour. We're not part of the cool kids club, the insiders club, so our voice doesn't count in this fight. you know that's what's going on here. And it was one black person whining about the term being dropped, and then the people, the whole group kicked her out. They kicked her out after all that, and they did it in a very unceremoniously fashion, in a very unprofessional way, and in a very disgusting way, really. I mean, it sounds perfectly reasonable to me that they didn't even ask her to apologize before they just went and decided that she was going to be ejected. That, by the way, if you can't detect the sarcasm, is on you. How on God's green earth was this a reasonable course of action? How was it sensible? It wasn't. You know that's the obvious conclusion. But no, I mean, super defensive of the moral principle of the matter. The right thing to do. You guys are like like what? You're a bunch of self-righteous crusaders who think that you're doing the right thing, but it's not hard to predict that this will backfire. It's not hard at all. It's just this kind of shit has turned the left into a rather hateful and bullying place and a very unwelcoming and cold place to be among. I mean, you guys and your it's like it's turned into the 2 minute hate week basically in 1984 shit. Every week we're looking for a new person to fucking hate and cancel. It just keeps churning out a new person to cancel, a new person to cancel, a new person to cancel. It's never enough. It's never enough. Nobody's ever good enough either. For these fucking people. I'm it's disgusting, and it's disturbing to see it happen, and it's sad to see it happening to high fantasy, and it's even more sad, considering that Mercedes Lackey has spent an entire life, all the way back to her teenager years, trying to include and preach the principles of inclusion and diversity. So this was soul crushing what they did, and I gotta say that, I mean, it's also incompetent in a very self-destructive fashion, and we will regret it. And they will regret it at least. I will personally stand in the rubble and tell you I told you so. You know, but yeah, it's not. It will. This is not the end and of any of this. And when the consequences of it start to really impact, don't tell me I didn't tell you so.